Welcome to Smith Weekly Discussions, an occasional program for our readers and listeners of Smith Weekly Research. Please note this program is a private discussion and everything contained herein is for entertainment and educational purposes only. With that, we hope you're in a comfortable position, along with your favorite beverage, to enjoy the discussion. We want to remind our audience to examine the show notes attached to each of our shows to better understand how our program functions. Before we get into our discussion, we want to say thanks for questions coming from our audience at Smith Weekly, including Jared W., Paul M., Luke A., and Andy J. Derek Iwanaka is our guest today. Derek is the Vice President, Corporate Development and Investor Relations for BeMetals Corp., a base metal focused company that is currently with projects at various stages in Idaho, the United States, and in Zambia, Africa. BeMetals is listed on the Toronto Venture Exchange under the symbol BMET. Derek, thank you for coming on our show.
Andrew, thank you very much for having me on the show, and I have my favorite beverage right next to me, so I'm ready to go.
Excellent. Well, Derek, I want to start out. Can you tell the audience about your background in this business and why you ended up working with the team at BeMetals?
Sure. It is actually pretty serendipitous how I got started, but my first job essentially out of university was helping a company move offices, and that company happened to be a little junior mining company called Bema Gold Corporation. At the time, it was pretty small. It had one operating mine, and I think they only had about maybe 500 employees at the time. It was producing somewhere around 100,000 ounces of gold. The stock was around $1.49 Canadian, and that was in 2002. And from there, it kind of went into a bit of a boom, and gold mining went up, and gold stocks went up, and eventually in 2006, they got a buyout offer from Kinross Gold, and that mining company went from a one producing asset to a three producing asset company and was bought out for $3.5 billion. Whether it was US or Canadian, it was almost the same at that point because I think the dollar was near par. So that was my first experience and exposure to the mining industry, and I went from just helping that company move offices to joining their investor relations department and stayed there for about 3.5 years before I was taken over, and went on to a nickel producer, which was operating down in Western Australia, and that company was essentially bought out by Panoramic Resources. It's funny, I mean, I always wanted to stick with one company and grow with it, and just never happened. Bema was taken out. Brilliant was taken out. I then thought, oh, let's go to the uranium sector, which is something that I quite like, and did about 5.5 years at Uranus Energy Corporation. It was a U.S.-based producer, ISR uranium producer in Wyoming, and did that for about 5.5 years before it was bought out by Energy Fuels. And so it was 3 for 3 of companies being bought out, and I was approached by the team at First Mining Gold, which at the time was First Mining Finance, and it's headed by Keith Newmeyer from First Majestic Silver. And they wanted to go into the business of taking advantage of a really tough bear market, which doesn't feel too different right now, but in 2015 was kind of a perfect time to be acquiring assets in the mining business. And so we went after gold assets, particularly in Canada, and ended up doing 8 transactions and accumulating about 12 million ounces of gold there. And just strangely enough, in 2018, kind of late 2018, I got a call from Clive Johnson, and he's the CEO of B2 Gold. And he said, "Hey, Derek, I'm starting up a new mining company. It's going to be base metals focused. We want to do essentially replicate what we've done at B2 Gold, but in the base metals sector." And I said, "How do I get involved?" So in October of last year, I got started. I've been with the company since, and was employee number 2. We've now made 2 acquisitions, and as you pointed out, we have a project in Zambia, which is copper exploration, and then we have a development project that is down in Idaho, and that kind of brings us up to today.
Well, excellent. I like that. And it sounds like the experience in the sector was really self-built over your run with these different companies that you mentioned. And was there any time during this, so B2 was around, were you involved with B2 while you were going around throughout your different ventures?
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to participate in the one of the seed round financings at 40 cents, and the stock obviously did quite well from the IPO and then continued to go onwards, upwards. And so I've stayed in touch. My first mentor in the business was Ian McLean, who's the VP of Investor Relations at B2 Gold and was formerly the VP of Investor Relations at Bema Gold. And so we've kept that close contact, and he was really the guy who taught me the business.
Now you mentioned uranium, and I saw that in your bio there. I want to mention that now that you brought it up. What is your position on where uranium is today, and what is your position on nuclear power?
Well, I'm a pretty stubborn person, so I've stuck with nuclear power. I know the benefits of it, being in the industry and meeting the people and the scientists, the geologists, the engineers that are involved, the traders. I've met all kind of facets of the business, and I am still supportive, even though I'm not in the uranium business anymore. But I mean, I guess I have a pretty strong connection with my Japanese heritage, and going to Japan and seeing firsthand kind of devastation from Fukushima, but also the benefits of nuclear power, which I think a lot of people do see, but it's really difficult in Japan right now, getting the people on board. I think the general public on board. It seems to slowly be coming along, but it's taken what? It's now 8 years since the Fukushima incident, and as I think we were talking just before the interview started, I think they only got about 9 reactors now either restarted or approved for restart, and out of maybe some 40 odd reactors in total. Maybe they're going to get about half of those restarted after it's all said and done. But it's definitely taken a lot longer, and I think it will come, but it's certainly taking more time.
Certainly, and the perception is always interesting. Whether you have a natural gas pipeline that explodes somewhere, or a rail transporting oil that goes off the rails up in Canada and wipes people out, or you have
Mhm.
a software glitch on a 737 Max, which causes problems as we've seen, and yet Fukushima somehow is tied with a nuclear reactor that melted down. And then there's no mention anymore of the tsunami waves that killed tens of thousands. And it's
Mhm.
really interesting how these things kind of get swept under the rug.
As far as I know, not one person has died as a result of radiation or any of the effects from Fukushima. But yeah, as you mentioned, thousands of people went missing or died from the tsunami. So it's unfortunate that that kind of took the focus from that incident, at least I guess around the world, anyways. But yeah, the devastation from the earthquake and the tsunami itself were actually much more substantial, in my opinion.
Yes, absolutely. So, Derek, what are your thoughts on this market for natural resource equities, and specifically the base metal part of the business?
It kind of depends who you talk to. If you're talking to the senior producers, they seem to be, for the most part, okay. If you talk to the junior companies, especially the explorers, it's very difficult in the capital markets sector. Raising money has not been easy, and we're fortunate enough to have a really strong board of directors, and we just closed the financing about a month ago now for 6.25 million Canadian dollars, and it was oversubscribed, and we actually had to cut some people back. So we're in a pretty fortunate position, and we are well positioned right now to actually start up 2 drill programs, one of which has already started as of last week.
So, Derek, what about what metals are you specifically liking in the market today that will likely surprise over the next 1 to 2 years?
Copper is definitely, I guess, our favorite metal right now. But zinc is the primary metal for our development stage project, which is down in Idaho. It's our flagship asset, and it's something that we want to develop and hopefully put into production within the next few years. So it is zinc focus, which has been kind of a turbulent metal, but I think overall the demand is going to continue to grow, and from the supply side, well, in our opinion, hopefully it's going to decrease, but it has been, I guess, kind of flatlined more or less, and we do see the demand growing, so it should lead to a higher price. And if you look at the stockpiles, for the most part, for the last couple of years, it has most definitely been on the decreasing side.
Right, and let's talk about that for just a moment, because the zinc component of BeMetals is interesting, and where you guys see that going, and your position in Idaho. Give us some specifics on what you see happening with the zinc demand side, the improvements there, and then also, can you give us some insights on what is going on regarding the supply side and the shortages that appear to be coming?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has been driven on the demand side. There's been much more demand because of electric vehicles, renewable energy sources. You'll see that pretty much from, I would say, 2013 or so, you've seen a pretty large decline of stockpiles in the LME, and it went from about 1,000 tons in 2013 down to almost zero. I mean, it's down to about 100 tons as of this year. So the stockpiles have dropped dramatically. There hasn't been a huge surge in the supply from the mining side, anyways, and so that has, for the most part, resulted in a higher zinc price.
Yeah, very interesting. I starting to see how that's going to work out incredibly well for companies who are positioned properly for zinc. And I know that there's been some discussion and some work done on using zinc as a soil supplement to help replenish some of the depleted soils on the agriculture side. So it'll be interesting to see how that progresses. Why wasn't the base metal focus not done over at B2 Gold? What was the thought process when management set up this separate company?
So B2 wanted to be leveraged to the gold price specifically, and it's done exactly that. If you look at the correlation between the gold price and the stock price for B2, it is pretty close. So they've always had that view, and so I think they wanted to be a pure play gold company, so not to mix with a base metals company. So, but there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to replicate some of the success that they've had in terms of exploring, developing, and then eventually operating assets in the base metals side. So it's an interesting story why the company got started, because the senior VP of exploration, Tom Garrigan, as a larger company, especially in Vancouver, they get a lot of deal flow. A lot of ideas get thrown their way. A lot of those, of course, are precious metals related, but inherently there's always some base metals assets that come their way and cross their desk. And so for a number of years, Tom had seen these projects come along, and unfortunately they just weren't able to touch them since they were so focused on the gold. That eventually they thought, it's time that we create a vehicle to capitalize on all this deal flow. And so that's the genesis of why BeMetals was actually started about a year ago now.
Well, let's get into BeMetals. I want to start with the structure and management. Who are the key people at BeMetals at the board and management level, and then also who are the notable shareholders on the roster?
Clive Johnson is the director. I would say he's almost like the chairman, but he is a director, and he is one of the largest shareholders of the company. So he has just under 10% of the shares outstanding right now. So he's one of the major shareholders. Tom Garrigan, as I said, Senior VP of Exploration at B2 Gold. He's also one of the founding directors, and is quite instrumental in the company with regards to taking a look at assets and figuring out the exploration potential for them. So he's also one of the major shareholders. Roger Richer is also with B2 Gold as an executive there, and is a major shareholder and is also very supportive of the board. And then John Wilton, who is a geologist, formerly with Antofagasta, so a lot of copper experience, and particularly he has a lot of experience in Africa, and so he is on the board and he's the CEO. And then there's Christian Reinertsen, who's our CFO, corporate secretary, and also a director. So everybody in the company is a shareholder, and it's quite largely internally held. But if you include kind of friends and family, we're looking at well over 50% of the company is held by either insiders or friends and family of insiders. We have just one institutional shareholder at the moment, and then the rest of it is really retail held. There are a number of brokers and clients that hold the stock at Haywood, but for the most part, it is pretty widely held.
Okay, and the institutional, can you share that with us, the name, or is that off limits?
It's never really been named officially, so I won't give you the name, but it is European based.
Sounds good. Can you give us the shares currently out, cash on hand? I know you just did a raise, and then, of course, what you expect that depletion rate of that cash will be.
Currently, it's about 105 million shares outstanding, and that's post our most recent financing and also post the acquisition of the Idaho property, which we had to issue some shares to acquire that. As of the end of the last quarter, which would have been March 31st, we had about $300,000 Canadian, and then we closed the raise of $6.25 million about a month ago now. So cash right now is probably sitting somewhere around between $4 and $5 million. We had some payables that we had to pay with related to the transaction. We have enough money to see all the programs go through for this year, as well as our marketing and overhead. So we're good until at least the end of the year.
And preservation of the capital structure while creating value and alignment with company owners. How does management approach these efforts?
So we're actually very careful about that. As I said, when we were doing the financing, it was oversubscribed. Originally, we were only trying to raise $5 million, and we got about $7 million in orders, which is testament, I think, to the company, considering most companies are just struggling to get any financing done at all just to keep the lights on. So we did try to limit it. So we cut it down to $6.25 million. That was to manage the dilution at such a low price. I mean, at 25 cents, which is where the financing was at, we think that's like almost like a seed round financing at that price. So very low priced, and so therefore we really wanted to keep that under control. Hopefully, the next round will be at a higher price, considering we do have 2 ongoing drill programs. And so the thought is that if things go well at either or both of those projects during the drill programs, that we can raise some money at a higher price.
So tell us a bit more about Clive Johnson. How involved with the company is he? And for the audience that does not know Clive, can you share with us the importance of having him around?
So Clive is kind of like a legend, I guess, certainly in Vancouver, if not in the industry itself. I mean, he's been doing this for, over 30 years now, I think. And he's taken Bema Gold from a tiny company that was just a junior explorer, took it up to a fairly large producer, anyways, intermediate producer. And like I said, it was bought out by Kinross for about $3.5 billion. And people said that it couldn't be done again. 2006, 2007, end of 2007, they decided to basically get the team, put the band back together again and try this over again. And in about 12 years now, B2 Gold has now become just under 1 million ounce per year producer of gold. Their market cap has surpassed what it was bought out for. It's around $4 billion now Canadian. So it only took them about 12 years to replicate and exceed where they were at Bema Gold. So he's had a lot of success. He's raised, over $2 billion now in the markets, whether that be equity or debt. So he's a terrific guy, but also he's brought along a huge team, and that team has been with him for decades. Literally, when I left Bema and came back to BeMetals, almost all the same faces were still there. And so that I think is pretty testament to him, a guy that people can work with, and he's a great leader and has attracted a great team around him that support him and have done it all over again. So the most important thing that I see with Clive is he's been able to attract great talent and loyal people.
And would you say right now, with his ongoing duties and so forth over at B2 Gold, would you say that the bulk of his time is really with B2 and BeMetals at this point?
B2 Gold for sure is the focal point for him. Kind of on the side, he does help out with BeMetals, and my office is actually on the same floor as B2, so it's good that I have access when I need it. But he's, I don't know what percent, but I would say by far the majority of the time is spent with B2 Gold.
Okay, yeah, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with B2. It's in a unique position now where it is, and in the market, and some of the consolidation that we're starting to see with some of the majors. It'll be interesting to see really how long B2 hangs around as far as other companies looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
With that, you mentioned on the same floor, with the company being so close with B2 Gold, what backing is B2 Gold providing to help support BeMetals?
So we're pretty careful about this. B2 Gold doesn't own any portion of BeMetals. So there's no cross shareholdings in that respect. But in terms of the people behind B2 Gold, in terms of the executives and some of the employees at B2, they are very supportive, and so that's where we really get the help, both from marketing, technical basis. We get a lot of support from that side of things. But in terms of the share ownership, we have to really be careful. It's not B3, although you could almost say it's like that. But it's not a B3. This is a base metals focused company that is really completely separate from B2, although we do want to replicate that same success.
Right. Well, tell us about the projects at BeMetals and what the objectives are for these projects. And if you would, let's start with South Mountain Zinc.
When we started up the company, the qualifying transaction was the Pangani copper exploration project in Zambia, and that kind of got us off the ground. And but the main focus has always been to become a producer, and so we wanted to find a development stage project. And when I started, the goal was to find at least something that's advanced stage development or possibly in production stage asset in base metals. We looked at probably about 35 projects in about 3 months. We visited, I think, 6 of those projects, and out of those, we put out offers on 3. And for a couple of reasons, two of those assets did not end up working out. One of them was for technical. Actually, 2 of them were for technical reasons. And fortunately for us, this one rose to the top and we were able to strike a deal with the management of Thunder Mountain Gold kind of late last year, and announced the deal in February. And so that got us our development stage asset.
And on South Mountain Zinc, can you give us just a little bit of a flavor for what that kind of CapEx, a ballpark of what that CapEx really looks like? And then also give us a little bit on the permit status and the key community support.
Sure. So internally, we had to put a model together. So this is not 43101 compliant, but we took a look at the project, put together our own model. We think that the capex would be quite modest, certainly sub $100 million, hopefully below $60 million. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is it is a past mining project, so there is still underground workings in place. There is still a road that goes up to the project. There's also something that we don't talk about much, which is there's a mill facility that's actually fairly close to the mine that has a bunch of equipment sitting on the ground that a lot of that could quite likely be used to construct a mill. So a lot of the infrastructure is already in place, so that keeps the capex low, and also it is a very high grade mine, one of the highest grade projects in all North America. It's over 10% if you just the zinc, and if you look at from a zinc equivalent basis, it's looking at over 17%. So very high grade asset, but also just because it is quite tight, I think it's going to be quite low capex. I won't really get into more specifics about the economics of it, just because we have our own model, but it's not 43101 compliant, so we can't really get into the details of that part.
And how about the permit status and key community support?
Yeah, so far we've retained the services of three key personnel from Thunder Mountain Gold, and so they have a lot of connections with the local government and also the local communities. I would say the closest actual local community really is in Oregon, in Jordan Valley. So that well, I haven't been down there yet, but our CEO was down there earlier this year, and from what I understand, the people were all asking him, when are you going to get started over there? So it seems as though, at least from that basis, that people are quite supportive in the closest town. From what we can see, the Idaho government is quite supportive, and there's Idaho Mining Association that is also very supportive of mining down there. So there are a number of neighbors that are also in mining, and they seem to be doing quite well. So we definitely see the support there from the state level and also from the local community level. And from permitting, all the known mineralization is on patented ground, so it should be very straightforward in terms of permitting.
Okay, and you don't foresee any roadblock issues with getting any of the permits there, given the status of the existing project?
BLM ground, or if you have any legacy issues with a past mining operation, then that definitely would slow you down. But in our case, it's an underground mining, or was an underground mining operation, and foreseeably will become another one. So there are no liabilities or obligations that are remaining. Those have been taken care of. There was some remediation that was done. We don't have any BLM ground, so it's not state or federal ground. So the permitting should be relatively straightforward, and is pretty much as straightforward as it can get.
Let's move over to the copper project in Zambia.
This is a favorite of our CEO. So our CEO, as I said, was formerly with Antofagasta, and he was the head of all exploration projects in Africa for Antofagasta. And in 2015, they did do some drilling there, and did a few, the first of the only actually holes, diamond drill holes that were done on the project, and each one of those hit into copper, low kind of grades, not ore grades, but each one of those holes intercepted copper anomalies, and unfortunately, the Antofagasta decided to pull out right at that time, decided to pull out of all operations outside of South America, and really just kind of retrenched into Chile. And so they pulled out, and the joint venture partner there wanted to continue on, and John really thought that the project had great potential, so he stayed on with the project with that joint venture company. And in 2000, and I guess it was end of 2017, approached Tom Garrigan and asked if B2 Gold would be interested in this project. And as it turns out, that's kind of when they were trying to get BeMetals started. And so this project ended up becoming our qualifying transaction, got us our listing on the TSX Venture. And it's in elephant country, so it's right on the Zambian copper belt. It's on the western side of it, and where there hasn't been a lot of exploration to date. But it's under a very thin layer of sand cover, which you if you know, say Nevada, where you have gravel cover, or other areas where you have cover like in Namibia, you will have calcrete cover. In this case, is just a thin layer of sand cover, which makes it very difficult to see any outcrop, and so it's difficult for companies just to walk around and pick stuff up. You actually have to drill, and so there's a great method that we use. It's called air core drilling, and we did a number of drill holes last year, about 113 holes, and that gave us um, the information that we needed to vector in on 3 targets, which we just started drilling one of them last week.
What are the plans for both projects over the next 12 to 18 months? And what do you expect to accomplish? And then specifically on the zinc side, kind of just give us an overview of the total time you guys expect to kind of bring that project to at least to a construction decision.
Everything is going to be really results driven, but from the Zambia side, since we're talking about it already, we're planning to spend about $1 million there. We'll do approximately 6 to 7 drill holes on 3 targets. That should give us a pretty good indication of whether we have something. All along the eastern side of the belt, and also where kind of the central part where Ivanhoe has had huge success with their Kamoa and Kakula project. Not a lot of huge discoveries have been made on the western side, but if you were to make a discovery in this type of setting, it would be monumental for us. So that's kind of the blue sky exploration, and we want to carry on to kind of in tradition of BEMA, because BEMA discovered the Kupol project, which ended up becoming a multi-million ounce discovery. So we're trying to do something like that here in Zambia, but at the same time we want to offset that, or down, I guess, offset some of the risk with having a more developed project, which is in Idaho. And for that project, we're looking to spend about $2.3 million US, so close to $3 million Canadian. That will get us about 2,500 meters of drilling, all from underground, so we're not doing surface drilling. And that should hopefully expand the resource, and will give us a really strong indication of whether we really have a larger resource there. Right now, it is a pretty small or modest resource in terms of being 43-101 compliant, but historically there was a much larger resource, probably about 5 times what that is. So we think with this drill program, we can increase the resource size and then push that project forward. So for Idaho, we're looking at this year's program. Next year, we'll look at doing, assuming the results are good, we would look to do a further program of about 5,000 meters of drilling next year, and then push that to a preliminary economic assessment stage. From there, we would decide whether we want to go into full construction, or whether we want to go to either pre-feasibility or feasibility study. So the outlook for that is, I'd say, at least 2 years anyways, to get us up to a PEA and then possibly a construction decision. And then in Zambia, really, that could change almost overnight. I mean, if we hit one good intercept, that could kind of change things really dramatically for us. But as I said, we're doing 6 holes. We'll see how, or 6 to 7 holes this summer, and we'll see how it goes from there.
No, it's great. You gotta start the start of a diverse set of assets. One asset more advanced than the other, so it's certainly a good setup going. On jurisdictions, what other places on the globe is BeMetals evaluating opportunities?
That's an interesting question. So it comes up quite often. We kind of take the page out of the B2 playbook, and they've never been discouraged from going into almost any jurisdiction. I mean, as you know, they're operating in Nicaragua, Mali. They have exploration ongoing in Burkina Faso. They have an ongoing project in Namibia and Philippines. So they're able to operate almost anywhere, and we don't see any reason why we can't do the same thing. I think if you treat people honestly and fairly in those countries or anywhere in the world, that you can do things successfully. And BEMA did that in Russia, where people said there's no chance you're going to be able to do this. The Russians will come in and take that project away from you if it ends up being successful, and that's absolutely not the case. And eventually, Kinross took it over, and Kinross is still operating the Kupol mine today.
Right.
So
How
no
about
jurisdictional preference, I guess you could say. I think as long as the project merits it, if it has the right economics and the potential, then we would look at it.
when it comes to Africa, do you see Namibia as kind of really the good old steady? And I know B2 Gold likes it. Is that a place that's certainly high on the list for Africa?
Interesting story. Our CEO, John Wilton, so he actually was the principal geologist there when they made the discovery of Otjikoto back in the 90s. And that was actually the first connection between him and really what eventually became B2 Gold. So he discovered that project with his team, and he loves Namibia. I'm sure that he would be very happy to go back to Namibia to do some work there. But kind of, I think South Africa in general, he's very familiar with. So we have that edge, I guess, especially from a Canadian company standpoint.
Okay. And I want to move on to the end strategy for BeMetals. Are you really looking to kind of delineate a solid set of projects that could turn into a sellout, or is there really a goal to copy the B2 Gold model exact on the base metal side?
Yeah, so we do want to be the goal is to become a producer and do it incrementally. So we want to start with a development stage project and develop that and put it into production on a small scale, but then that would help us give us the platform to take on new assets, get that experience under our belt in terms of operating a mine, and then moving on to the next one. We probably can do things a little bit, maybe not necessarily faster, but I think that because we have the experience of all the B2 guys, that we could find potentially a producing asset and add that to the fold. So that would obviously leapfrog things, but we just want to build it for at this stage. We just want to build it incrementally. Start with a development stage asset, take that into production. Concurrently, we also want to do tier one exploration, and so the Pangani project gives us that opportunity to do that. If we can find other exploration properties that have huge exploration potential, then we would. I mean, we're looking at those as well. But getting into production is kind of one of the highest priorities that we have right now, and then growing out from there.
Absolutely. No, I think it's a interesting setup. So, Derek, why should investors, potential investors that are listening, be considering BeMetals? What would you say to them?
You probably heard this so many times. It has to do with the people. I mean, bad people can ruin great projects, and conversely, sometimes great people can make even I guess mediocre projects into decent projects at least if you have the right team. And I think B2 has demonstrated that time and time again. They've put multiple mines in production all over the world in very challenging, or what is perceived to be very challenging jurisdictions. So that's exactly what we want to do. I think that's a huge differentiation that we have. Having Clive Johnson involved and Tom Garrigan, whether it be technical advice, whether it be connections on the finance side of things. I mean, not too many companies have raised billions of dollars, and so if we need, I think, funds to get into construction and production, if anybody has those connections, we should. So I think that is a huge advantage that we have over most typical companies. And if you just look at our most recent financing, I think we already demonstrated that on a small scale, but can't wait to do that on a larger scale.
And how can our audience reach out to the company for more information?
you can go to the company website if you like. It's bemetalscorp.com, but anybody can reach me as well at 604-609-6141 or just at info@bemetalscorp.com. We also have social media feeds, and so if you go to the website, you can check out those feeds as well.
Okay. Well, Derek, we appreciate you taking the time today, and good luck over at BeMetals.
Andrew, thank you so much for having me on.